Well, it's been a week of great enlightenment concerning women and, and all of the achievements that they have been able to make, especially on the continent. For me, it's been an exciting and a revealing moment. But we have decided to extend this beyond what a lot of people have been talking about. And it has to do with celebrating each one for each other so that the continent can better appreciate what this means when it comes to talking about our girl child and the woman. I'm Sulaman. This is VSA. For a long time, the power of parity has been undermined by African countries as women face stereotypes and are victimized even for normal things, targeted by some of the most mundane practices on the continent. African women have managed to impress on grand stages. They are business leaders, some of the finest medical practitioners, researchers, entertainers, artists, educators, athletes in the world. You name it. African women are rising greatly, and with more companies and institutions giving more women opportunities to be a part of their growth, the narrative is gradually changing, with Rwanda, South Africa, and Mauritius giving more opportunities to their women folk. These are not enough, no doubt, as African women, like other women in the world, call for more and ask for more, and even now the men must also join in the asking. Now, some of the fastest growing companies in Africa are led by women, and the willpower of the feminine gender is never questionable. There is so much to gain from women on the continent if given a chance, and that's why we have these conversations. Joining me on the square this evening, Olubukola BUKY Williams, the Executive Director, Education as a Vaccine, and of course, pretty much later, Professor STELLA OKUNNA. Oh, Professor is right there. She's the first female professor of mass communication in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa. Good to have both of you join me today on the square.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
me.
Yeah.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
I'm excited as well having you on the show. Initially, we were trying to get to you quickly before the start of the show. Let me start with BUKY here, and it's been a week, or an exciting week, BUKY, and one that we have decided here on News Central that it must go beyond. March 8, celebrating women must be a daily occurrence until we get it right there that things have actually changed.
I think we can definitely celebrate the progress of what we've seen in terms of women moving to the top. And like you said, there's already been news that are coming in. We're seeing Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who's got into the WTO, and that's a lot of excitement, and it's showing that women can lead and women have the leadership skills and they can deliver on really big issues. But I think at the same time, we still have to look at the progress we've made and realize that there's still more to do. There's still a lot more to do. And I think that's what is important for us, is to show that, women are already doing a lot. They're already contributing their own quota.
Let me quickly go to Professor STELLA OKUNNA. Looking at your resume, one of the things that resonates with me is Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala talking about first for her, and it's also a first for you, knowing that you've been able to achieve quite a lot here on the continent, being the first female professor of mass communication in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa. When you first got into that, level, that height, how did you feel when you were first introduced as the first female professor of mass communication, not just only in Nigeria, but in Sub-Saharan Africa? Let me go back to BUKY. Looks like we're having a glitch going to Professor OKUNNA. BUKY, if you're there, if you can hear me, as much as we want equality in growth, which is one of the key asking of women and men, and of course opportunities for women, one must recognize that some of these things need to, be pushed, like men joining in the conversation.
Sure. I think it's really important for men to be part of the conversation and to engage other men, especially because I think often when a lot of women are talking or when girls are pushing for things, there's this understanding that, oh, you women are just making noise. There's really no issue. Where's the data? Where's the evidence? But I think when men join in and say that we see the issue as well, and we believe that there should be more spaces for women, and joining the push and joining the fight, other men listen, boys listen, and see them as an example that, oh, we do need to join the fight for gender equality. And one of the things that you can see in terms of the evidence that has come out, right? So for companies who have gender equity or, showing gender balance, if you look at nations where women are also leading, one of the things we saw during COVID was that all countries that were led by women, for example, New Zealand and some of the Nordic countries, were showing better results in terms of being able to respond to the pandemic and being able to respond to the crisis. Companies that have gender equity are showing that they can actually deliver more and are more successful. Companies with more women on the board as well, we see that. So I think when men join in making those statements, in showing that evidence and in pushing men to actually share power and are pushing men to shift power, then it does make a difference. It truly does. So we need more men talking to men, not just women talking to men, but more men talking to men, more men showing example to boys.
Just it was only yesterday I said to my guest on the show that time was when even on live television on the continent, it takes becomes almost impossible to have female subject experts to come out to be so vocal on issues. But things are changing. Tell us how it's been for you working with especially young girls, and what are those things they share with you in their growing up, years amongst peers, as well as amongst their friends who are of the male gender.
I think for me, one of the big things that we get from girls is that for them, especially when we have safe spaces and we have conversation, it's realizing that they have leadership skills in them, right? And they don't have to believe what is being told to them, that girls cannot be strong, girls cannot be leaders, girls just have to follow, they just need to be told, girls should be seen, not heard. All of those things that they've heard growing up. And when they're in those spaces and they're sharing their own ideas, they're learning about themselves, they're learning about self-esteem, they're building their confidence. All of a sudden, they realize that they have this leadership skills, that they too have ideas. They have leads, they have things they want to share with their communities. They have things they want their communities to do. And even that, you're seeing that in terms of, girl child education. One of the work that we did is we got a Malala Fund education grant in Kaduna State, and seeing girls who come and tell me, I want to go back to school. Once they finish our safe space, they're like, I want to actually finish my education. It's going to make a difference in my life. Or, I too have dreams. I want to, be a dancer. I want to be an actress. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a teacher. All of these things, they're realizing that they have the power to access it. And it's really magical to watch these girls come into themselves, because it's not that they didn't have it, it's that they were often told to be quiet, or that, they should only listen to the boys. But for when they get a chance to participate in sports, when they get a chance to, be the class leader, where they get all of these opportunities, all of a sudden they blossom, and it's really beautiful to see.
Let me bring in Professor STELLA OKUNNA again here. I just wouldn't let this slip away. I love to share in that magical moment, the very moment you were introduced, and you just realized that you were the very first female professor of mass communication in Nigeria and Sub-Saharan Africa. Tell me how you received that, how it felt. Perhaps that can also help young girls watching at the moment.
You know, one thing about career development is that when you are enjoying the things you're doing and you have the capacity to do them, you really don't count who is doing what. I have always been a lecturer in mass communication. I was doing research, I was teaching, I was writing papers, I was going to conferences and seminars, doing the things I enjoyed doing the things I had capacity to do. And suddenly, the promotion came. I didn't know I was the first. I wasn't keeping tabs on anybody's own career.
So you were just running your own course, doing your own thing.
Running my life, doing what I enjoyed doing. And when the announcement came, it was awesome. And I was the only professor in Nigeria who was a woman for more than 10 years. So young girls were really looking up to me. And I was conscious of that all the time, aspiring to be like you. It was an experience that really changed my life because I realized I had become a role model for young people and I had to conduct myself and encourage them. I've done a lot of mentoring in my life. Mentoring for young academics, but mostly for women academics who are young also. And the generation below us, we are no longer young. There are much younger generations now. And my job now is to make sure they realize the capacity they have to shine in their careers, no matter the odds. If they are young married women, there are very strange and very stringent challenges they have to face. In all that, they must somehow multitask to get to where we are. So it was an awesome experience that changed my entire life and bearing in the things I do.
Well, anyway, I think we'll come back and let you speak pretty much more on your mentoring, projects which you're running for people. But again, you said something about multitasking, which will bring us to how a woman can effectively balance the home, the career, as well as, even continue to work in any chosen endeavor. Tell us how you were able to achieve this as a professor.
It was tough. Our culture and our religion, they tend to carve out a very subordinate position for women. No matter how ranking you are, even in Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is a wife. And she has to still think about her home in addition to the career. It's not easy. No matter how high she rises, she has to still give attention to her husband, even though...
Well, there seems to be a glitch in that connection. I hope we can get to Professor OKUNNA again. Quite an incisive and exciting moment we're having with both of our guests today, Professor OKUNNA as well as BUKY. Let me come to you, BUKY. Listening to her, one can better understand the challenges women on the continent have. More like having two babies. The husband maybe as baby number one and the children as another baby. But again, now speaking quite frankly, you have to be like an octopus, being a woman, having all hands and not losing focus of everything. How has that been when you mentor young girls? How do you prepare them for that kind of life ahead?
Well, I would, shift this conversation a little bit and say that as much as we try to tell young girls about the possibilities that exist and having to manage their lives, we're also working to change society for them, right? To create a society that is an enabling environment for them to achieve their dreams. And when we talk about gender equality, we're not just talking about gender equality in the workspace, we're talking about gender equality in the home as well, right? Because often a lot of the reasons why women bear this domestic burden is because it's seen as a woman's role alone. But the thing about it takes two to tango, right? There's two parents there. And that means both of them must carry their load. And when we even discuss Ngozi Iweala, one of the things that came across in her story was that she had a very supportive spouse who was also a busy surgeon, but also spent time taking care of the children, also carried his own weight in the home. And that made a difference in the lives. And you can hear the story of Ruth Bader Ginsburg as well, a former Supreme Court Justice in the United States, may she rest in peace. One of the things that she also shared about was that her husband, who was also a lawyer, was ready to take on some domestic chores as well in the home to make sure that she succeeded. And when he needed to take a step back in his career to support her, he did. And so that's what we need. And that's the kind of world and society I'm trying to build for young girls, that I want them to come into the workspace, but also in the home as well.
In other words, I think it will be proper, just as we tried to highlight yesterday, that in trying to change the narrative, the conversation should also include young boys, so that they start understanding and appreciating the extent of a cultural change which the continent is trying to put right in there.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think that's something that we discuss with young boys. There's this idea around looking at positive masculinity, right? Often when we think of boys, we think of aggressive, we think of strong, we think of angry, we think of all of these words that make them seem violent or make them ready to perpetrate violence, or that they're the head of the home and that means all they do is give warnings and tell people what to do. But I think also saying that boys can be loving, they can be gentle, they can contribute to the home, they can bathe their kids, they can bond with their children by reading to them. They can do all of these things, and it doesn't turn them into a woman rapper. It doesn't turn them into a girl, into a woman. They're still a man and they're still contributing. And to be quite honest, studies have shown that this is also good for their mental health. When they're seen as human, not just seen as strong men who have to defend and protect, but who are seen as men who are trying to live their lives, who want to achieve their dreams as well, and who want to have strong and beautiful families that love them and they love. And I think that's the kind of dream we have for boys. So how can we try to model positive masculinity that reinforce a more just and equitable division of labor, that is also beneficial to them? How do we ensure that if they need help, they can ask for help? And it doesn't mean that they're weak. And I think all of these things make it possible for us to show boys that the possibilities are endless, and that, there's no one way to be a man, right? Being a man, means many things. And if we can create that kind of world, then all of us will benefit as well.
Well, I hope Professor OKUNNA is back, and she's, that's good. Good to know she's back. Quickly here, Professor OKUNNA, well, it does happen sometimes when it comes to, technology. Yeah, you sometimes suffer a glitch. Apologies on that. Before we lost the connection to you, we were talking about, the home front, how much of assistance we must get from other members of the family, especially the husbands, for sisters, maybe the brothers. But let's speak more about culture, because this hinges greatly on culture. Listening to BUKY, she used a term which we are familiar with here in Nigeria, woman rapper. This is you're a man, this is a girl's thing. Don't you know you're a woman? Why are you sitting down there watching your mother do A, B, and C? So a bad culture over the years has been passed down to our children today. So how easy can we start this reorientation in the home front to making especially the boy child appreciate his position in the midst of the girl child?
It wouldn't be easy. Changing culture isn't easy, but we must do it. I think the woman's survival somehow even depends on making the boy child more gender friendly, more gender sensitive. Because our child rearing practices have for so long made the boy child superior to the girl child, and we must change this. All mothers must see this as a task. When you're bringing up your children, you should insist on both boys and girls doing the chores in the house. It's even to your own advantage. Nowadays, I teach in a university. And nowadays, you see young people, and they're coming in younger and younger. When we were in the university, we were much older. Today, you see 16-year-old children, 17, 18. And the boys coming here knowing absolutely nothing. They can't even wash their own clothes. They can't cook for themselves. They can't do anything. You know what they do? They end up living, cohabiting with their girlfriends who are equally young, and it's a disaster. So mothers are even losing out. It is their own advantage, not even for fighting for gender equality, but for the survival of their own children when they go to school, to teach them to become more gender friendly and to see the girl child also as an equal. And sometimes, rarely, given our culture and religion, I don't think Nigerians are asking for equality yet. If you ask me, maybe the younger generation, but even they, we are talking about equity now, fairness. Equality might come, but for now, we are asking that men realize that women and women's rights are human rights. And the mothers, in bringing up their children, must change the narrative about culture and let their boy child become human also by teaching them life survival strategies. Otherwise, both they and the family as we know it today are doomed. So I agree with what has been said. We must change child rearing practices, and we must domesticate, in quotes, the boy child to make him more human so he can appreciate. And when he grows up with these values about seeing women as something important, he will grow up with that. And when he marries as a husband, he will see his wife as a challenge to him when she begins to strive to rise in her own career as he has done. As a task we must all accomplish, and soon.
Well, that actually got to me, Professor OKUNNA, when you said, for now, what majority of the women, especially the older women, are asking for is fairness. And, in communities, more women are working to ensure that stifling conditions are eroded, taken out of our system. Now, you've also mentioned legislature here now. How does that also help in ensuring a more friendly, fair working environment? Well, I think I lost the connection again, but we'll take a moment. We'll come back. We're having a fine conversation here with Professor STELLA OKUNNA and, of course, BUKY WILLIAMS, two great African women, as we continue our celebration of women in the world, more so here on the continent. And we're looking at how best we can have everyone on this very, very great advocacy, irrespective of their leaning and thinking. But when we come back, we'll speak more on this. Stay with us. Welcome back to VSA here on News Central, your Pan-African station. And of course, we've been looking at the International Women's Day, which started here March 8th. And for us here, the entire week has been dedicated to the African women. While many African nations have the Minister of Women Affairs, women haven't really been beneficiaries of government programs. Issues like rape, sexual assault, domestic violence are still rampant on the continent. Some cultures also abduct women for marriage, while some people sell their daughters, for properties. There's a lot to do on education of African communities, as they need to be reminded of the high importance and role of the girl child. as highlighted by BUKY Williams and Professor OKUNNA, nations have been built with strong women, and the continent, despite the constraints, also has great women in its history. As activists, leaders, wives of some of the continent's greatest leaders. Women are breaking more grounds and are maximizing their capability and capacity despite these stereotypes, and that's what our conversation has been built on today. There are many more in the rural areas waiting to be untapped and contribute their quota to the growth of the continent. So let's take this home on the square. We won't talk about the growth of women without talking about the role of men. Before the break, we started, highlighting that very important aspect. Help us here, BUKY. What is the message to men on the continent as we try as much as possible to redirect and rejig, cultures, orientation, even though Professor OKUNNA has said, well, it just might be difficult, but we must have a starting point.
Yeah, I actually really think it's important about men that we should specifically mention and highlight. They were talking about systems and structures, right? That center power in masculinity. That's really what we're talking about. We're not just talking about individual men and only their behaviors and their attitudes. We're actually talking about systems and structures that reinforce male domination and therefore subjugate women as well and oppress women. And so that it's important for them to join us in fighting these structures and join us in dismantling the structures. And so I feel like oftentimes when we talk about these issues, men feel like we're attacking them personally, or we're saying they're a bad person, or we're saying that they are the ones who are oppressing women. But the thing about it is that this is a system, this is a structure that exists to benefit you. And in order for it to change, you need to recognize how you're benefiting from the system just by being a man, right? And that you need to dismantle it in the name of fairness, as Professor Stella has mentioned, and in the name of equality and equity. Because the truth of the matter is that women are just as smart. Women also have the capacity, they have the tools and all of these things to be able to deliver on these issues. So it's, join us in dismantling it. It is not against you personally. And the truth of the matter is that it's going to benefit you in the end as well, because we know that the truth of the matter is that patriarchy affects men too. They lose out because of patriarchy, because they're forced to fit into these gender stereotypes. We see it has an impact on their mental health. We see it has an impact on their self-esteem and how they view themselves. But if we live in a more just and equitable world, it will contribute to men feeling better about themselves as well. So it's a win-win. Even if you feel in the short term that it is not, I promise you that it is.
Let me bring in Professor OKUNNA here again. Apologies, Professor. Sometimes it does happen, having this kind of glitch. But quickly here, there are sections of the African populace who believe women are given political appointments just to appease the generality. Do you think this is acceptable?
That's tokenism, isn't it? There are times I think you've mentioned the worst section of Nigerian life. Women in politics, women in leadership. I think that's where the discrimination is just too much. In other areas, men are beginning to maybe concede a little ground. But in politics, they think a woman has no place in politics at all. And in my own culture, the Igbo culture here, any woman who aspires to become a political leader, people think you're wayward. It's not your place to be in politics. And I think all that has to change. Like BUKY said, honestly, when I think about what is going on, I tend to feel that things are getting worse. Growing up, I think women were more comfortable trying to shine in their own small corners. But now men are shining in their corners, and most men don't even want women to shine at all, anywhere. So in political leadership, women have to still keep pressing. If you look at all the governors in Nigeria, they're all, that is, in elective positions, in leadership generally. men are dominating in elective positions, even in appointive ones. So once they get in there, I think they should be more humane to appoint more women. So generally, like she said, the structure has to be dismantled. We cannot continue this way. Women cannot keep bearing this kind of burden. When there are more educated women, women today are more enlightened, they are more knowledgeable, so they are more qualified to hold important positions. Yet, you practically have to kill yourself to get into that kind of position. So I think the structure, with the support of men, has to be dismantled. And women should be in the forefront, but men should also follow or assist in making sure equity is realized.
Let me stay with you, Professor OKUNNA, before I go back to BUKY. Listening to you, having that support is very important. But one other aspect we have highlighted in the course of our conversation in the week is women also supporting women, as well as women supporting women versus women pulling down women.
I don't believe in that. That's one slogan they use against us. They say women are their worst enemies, and that women will not support. It is not true. Men fight other men in even vicious fights than women fight. And when men fight, it is like they could even kill. So women should reject that kind of acronym, that women are their own worst enemy. It is not true. I believe women will support women when such women who are coming out deserve those positions. There are rivalries among women. I agree. But the rivalries among us, between us, they are not as bad or worse than those between men. Men can be vicious when they compete. So women should not listen to that kind of thing. It puts us down. I agree there are women who don't support other women, but majority of women will support a woman who is good enough. But what happens here is tokenism. They appoint, maybe there are 10 positions, they appoint 9 men, and they say, oh, there's no woman. They put anybody, and they put one mediocre person there. She goes there, she doesn't perform, and she justifies what they say against us, that we cannot hold that kind of position. So women should prepare themselves adequately, become knowledgeable, a good education, and then know what the issues are. So that when you get in there, on merit, not tokenism, you go in there and you give it your best shot and you do well enough. And when you do well enough, you will encourage the men who appointed you, who are still dominating the world. And then you'll encourage other women to also aspire and boost our confidence. Above all, women should believe in themselves. A lot of self-esteem is required, which our culture and our religion have somehow denied us of. We must find that self-esteem. We must find that self-confidence. We must equip ourselves. We must educate ourselves. We must become knowledgeable and prepared to assume these positions so that when we get in there, we can shine and sustain confidence in the system.
Professor OKUNNA, we'll come back to you so that we can talk more about educating the girl child. BUKY, I saw you, more than twice, nodding, in agreement with to what the Professor OKUNNA has been saying. Tell us, let me hear you add your voice to that, because you seem to be, in agreement with her.
Yes, I am in complete agreement with her. That argument that, women are each other's worst enemy, it keeps getting used against us, right? That, it's because women don't vote for women. That's why we're not seeing more female politicians. It is because women are not encouraging other women or giving them opportunities. But the truth of the matter is that for us to even get this far, it took women's rights activists to push for the right to vote, to push for us to get an education, who have been challenging systems and authority. We've seen it in terms of colonialism, even getting our independence, right? Women were at the forefront of these battles and of these struggles. And it took so long for us to start to realize when we started reading history books, right? We hear about the Aba women's riots in Nigeria. We know about Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, not just because they say she was the first woman to drive a car, but because she stood up to not only colonial powers but to traditional authorities. Protesting taxes against market women in partnership with market women. And so I really think this argument that women are each other's enemies, it's not correct. It's not true. It fits into the gender stereotypes of women being gossips, women being vindictive. And I think she made a great point about men also having issues with men, but that's not seen as a bad thing. That is seen as normal disagreements between men. But I think the truth of the matter is that at the end of the day, we should give women their rightful space in society. And it's not just within the home, it is also within decision-making spaces. And we've seen women deliver. That's just the truth. We've seen them deliver. And so I think it's just time for us to recognize that.
Let me bring in Professor OKUNNA here, because this is one painful aspect in our, development, especially in Africa and more so Nigeria. Growing up, I saw some families who were hit by poverty, and when it came for the family to make some very hard decisions on who to forge ahead with education, these families will ask the girl child to stand down and say it's only the male child that they want to continue education. Now, having you here speak with us and speak to the continent gives a sense of hope and joy. No one better than you to talk about that kind of attitude from some parents back in the day.
That's part of the culture. Like I said earlier, two things that have put women down in Africa are religion and culture, because both of them conspire to make women subordinate to men. I remember, you're quite right, and I come from a culture, the Igbo culture, where it is a male-oriented society. And like you said, if the odds are down, the chips are down, and they want to somebody to step down in education, it is a woman. Even when the chips are not down, they think you're a woman, you'll eventually get married and leave the family and bear somebody else's name. So why waste family resources on you? When you will finish training, you go to another family and they will benefit and will lose. That's a terrible thing. I'm happy we are changing now. The Igbo woman is very enlightened. The girl child is in school in my state and all over Igbo land. There are pockets of this kind of thing, but then things are changing. But having educated the woman up to a level, the woman has to take over on self-education. So I agree with you. The culture is terrible against women. It still is. There are areas in Igbo land or even all over Nigeria where the girl child cannot inherit the father's property, no matter how rich your father is. You may have 10 houses and one son and 5 daughters. The one son inherits everything and the girls get nothing. I hope things are changing. Some are even resorting to litigation. Some families are beginning to go to court and win cases against their parents for disinheriting them. But above all, this battle has to be fought by women themselves. And I said it, even if your parents don't educate you when you are growing up, you should find opportunities and make sure you are getting better and better to prepare yourself for leadership. Because you see, the odds are against us. You don't have a good education because your parents denied you that. You don't have money to compete in politics, and there's money politics in Nigeria. The odds are there. But somehow, women have to face these challenges and surmount them. I remember I was in government for 8 years with Peter Obi as governor. And I occupied some very...
Can't believe I just lost that connection. Professor OKUNNA, are you still there? I really have to come back because we need such, moments learning curves from great women like yourself. Let's go to BUKY here. BUKY, I think Professor OKUNNA is back. Well, sorry about that. We lost the connection to you for a moment when you were about sharing your experience with us while you served in government. Can you take us through that again?
I said, usually when women have the opportunity, first of all, you should prepare yourself adequately so nobody can say you're not qualified for any position. And once you're there and eventually you get appointed, you should go in there and give it your best shot. Do your best. It will not be easy, particularly if you have a home to run. But no matter what the odds, I have to really go in there and do so well that the men who appointed you are impressed, and other women watching you who think you may not succeed are also impressed. And when you do well, other women see you as a reference point and a role model, and they prepare themselves, and when they get in there, they also shine. Like I told you, I was in government with His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi as governor for 8 years. I occupied some very important positions. I was chief of staff, I was commissioner for planning, for information, for budget, the coordinating commissioner for development partnership and donor agencies, and these were very challenging positions. All eyes were on me, and somehow, by the grace of God, I'm not sure I wasn't perfect, but at least I did my best, and it's encouraging more women to get into politics. That's the point. People don't believe women have the capacity to become political leaders or even leaders at any level. So once you get in there, make sure you give it your best shot and prepare yourself to go in there.
You know, Professor OKUNNA, this is quite encouraging. I must say congratulations because you did well, and because we all know how it is politically in Nigeria. No one has that kind of rare chance of serving both terms, making 8 years with a single, governor in office if you're not that good. So that's quite encouraging to young African women watching you at this point in time. I see a smile. I caught a smile there on the face of BUKY while you were telling us these personal experiences. BUKY, the conversations are sinking deep, and the change in opinion and understanding has been steady. So great African women like Gracia Michelle and have provided platforms for the growth of the African girl child and the empowerment of African women. But you would agree, BUKY, Africa needs more.
Yes. Yes, we still have a long way to go. I don't think we should, rest on our laurels. What we're just seeing is some of the good news to keep us going, to tell us that it's possible to actually move this conversation forward. So it's just a reminder that we need to keep going and that we need to do more. Because even if we're seeing gender parity in terms of primary education in Nigeria, we're not seeing that retention at secondary school level. And we need to get there. And COVID is going to have an impact on that as well. So it's quite important for us to keep going. We're still seeing high numbers in terms of early and forced and child marriage. We're seeing numbers like 22 million child brides. And that's a significant issue because that delays that delays a lot of growth for women. So women forced to drop out of school to go get married, forced to have kids earlier than they planned. Facing all forms of violence, sometimes physical violence, emotional violence, sexual violence. And so we're seeing those kind of issues as well. So we still have a lot of work to do in ensuring that every girl gets a chance to complete her education. For example, the work we're doing with Malala Fund in Kaduna State, there's a network of champions, and we did some research during COVID. And some of the things we found out was that girls did not have time to study. They were forced to take on more domestic work. And for some girls, we found out that parents were putting their girls in public schools, but putting their boys in private schools. So we're still seeing some of the issues that Professor STELLA mentioned. It's still happening here and now in Nigeria. And so it's quite important for us to still keep pushing that every child deserves an education, whether girl or boy. The issue of violence is something that we have all been talking about significantly. And so it's quite important, especially looking at not just rape and sexual assault, but also sexual harassment in tertiary institutions. It's been significantly heartbreaking when you go to tertiary institutions and hear from girls who are being harassed, by their professors, who are not passing them because they don't want to have a relationship with their professors. We're seeing boys being affected as well, where the professor is saying, "Is that your girlfriend? I'll fail you if you don't tell your girlfriend to come answer my call," or things like that. And universities and schools that are supposed to be safe spaces are no longer safe spaces. And it's making it difficult for girls to graduate, for girls to thrive. And we're also seeing sexual harassment in workplaces. So there's still really a lot of work to do. We still have in legislation discriminatory laws against women, and we've had to go to court. So, for example, recently in Nigeria, a policewoman who got pregnant was dismissed from the police force. I mean, we're seeing these kind of things where we're using even laws to discriminate against women in particular. So there is a lot of work to do, and we must keep pushing, and we must keep raising these issues, and we need to get more people supporting dismantling these laws. We need to bring in more laws to address issues around sexual harassment, policies in universities to address it. We need more states to provide free education to secondary school level, not just primary school level, to be ensure that girls are able to stay in school and graduate, because we know the benefits to our economy, to health, because it affects maternal mortality, it affects infant mortality. We know it benefits the environment, and we just know that it makes life better for everyone, including women and girls. And so it's important. We must continue to do the work. We can't stop now.
Let's see if we can close with Professor OKUNNA. You're looking at the important roles of great African women like Okonjo Iweala, Aruma Ote, as well as Amina Mohammed in the global perception of African women. How has that been able to help encourage young girls on the continent, more so someone also like yourself, when they look towards African women and say, wait a minute, against all odds, they are on the global, pedestal. I too can be there.
I don't know how to describe to you the joy we felt here when Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was confirmed. When that battle to get for her to get in there began, we held our breath, and then when it happened, the jubilation was universal, because at long last we saw women really breaking into big time professionalism, not only in Nigeria but outside Nigeria. That kind of thing can motivate young people. But then it's not simply jubilating. You need to prepare yourself. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala got there prepared. I looked at her CV and I was impressed. So if women succeed, that's why I said earlier, if something happens and eventually they give you a chance, the almighty men give you a chance to go in there. As a woman, go in there prepared and do your very best. Because when you do well, it encourages other women, really younger people, to also aspire, to believe that they can do it and they have the capacity. But I think above all, as we are striving on our own as women, the law has to support us. In all honesty, there should be legislation to let the men give a little bit of chance, space for us. I know there's a gender policy in Nigeria. I'm sure you know that. I think 2006 gender policy of 35 affirmative action. Do we have that? We don't. When you make policies like that one, I think it was Goodluck Jonathan's government that put that in place, that women should be given at least 35%. Like I said earlier, we are not asking for equality. 35% is equity. We don't even have it. When such laws or policies are put in place, they must be enforced somehow.
Well,
and
anyway,
if the law supports us and the men become more friendly, more gender friendly and more sensitive and more considerate, and the women become more pushful and more prepared and better prepared, That's a lot of ground to cover.
Well,
There
it's
is
a fine,
so much to
I think, Professor OKUNNA, is a fine place to leave it here. A whole lot to do. I'd like to thank you, Professor Stella OKUNNA and BUKY Williams. Both of you have been awesome and encouraging younger Africans, girls, women, as well as the male gender. It takes a village to train a child, but when you train a girl, you build a community. They are your daughters, sisters, wives, mothers, aunts, grandmothers, friends, colleagues. They are special beings. Support one today. And of course, join News Central in making the African woman a very, very magical person on the continent. You can watch News Central TV on channel 274. I'm Sulaiman. I'll see you again tomorrow.